tying the anchor prints today. It's an all tungsten tie, and I've already cut the wires using the procedure given in a short segment following this fly tying video. So I'm holding 5 of the wires, cut wires, in my hand, and I've already put the bead on, a 4mm faceted gold tungsten bead, and I've tied in the Nano-silk, which is 20D. I'm using a very fine thread to try and keep the bulk down, try to keep, even though I'm going to be tying 5 wires, I want to try and minimize the diameter of the body, and along the lines of the thin to win concept. So here I'm going to tie in the 5 wires, all stacked up on top of each other. And then as you start to wind them on, you can distribute them around the hook shank, like that. And then I'm going to leave a short segment up front, right behind the bead, so I can, when I bring the ribbing forward, I can hide the wire there and cut it. And then also I can bring the dubbing forward that forms the body and hide it there. And finally, I put a twist of CDC oiler puffs there. Okay, so we've lashed it on. Oh, see, so there, I've cut the thread at the back here, and I found it's necessary to put a little daub of UV setting cement to cover the cut ends that are quite sharp. And I control the amount and placement of the UV setting cement using a toothpick. It also forms a nice transition from the tail area onto the abdomen. There. And then I set it. Okay. Now I'm ready to tie in the tails. I use these so-called Prince Brown bats, and I'm going to cut 2 of them and oppose them. So they have a natural bend to them, and I'm going to flip them so that they flare out like tails do on the prints. So the rest of this tie is going to be done in hyperspeed because it's exactly like a standard Prince nib. So I split this 20D thread, and we're going to make a dubbing loop. So, like this, and I'm using this fine flash dubbing, Sabai fine flash dubbing in black, which I think looks pretty good for peacock herl imitation. Now, this is a pretty finely cut dubbing, and I try to get it perpendicular to the length of the thread inside of the loop. And I also try to put in enough that I can wind the whole abdomen at once. So I squeeze the thread and pull the thumb out, finger out. Turn the hook sideways and start the spin. And you can kind of move the thread, the fibers around and arrange them perpendicular after a few spins. And again, I'm trying to get them to flare out into a dubbing brush rather than into a noodle, get wrapped around the thread into a noodle. Trim the butt ends here. And now I'm going to do a turn of the CDC oiler puffs. And these are brown. They're a little reddish brown. I would like them darker and redder, but I can't find them as easily. So we pull off a few fibers, and we don't need a ton of these. When we're going to tie them on the far side and then on the near side. And whip finish. So there you have it, the anchor prints tied in an all tungsten without any lead at all. So now for the weigh-in. This fly was tied on a Firehole 551 size 8. So for a size 8 fly, I'm looking for like 3/4 of a gram, and a number 6, a gram, and so forth, you know. So a number 10 would be between 1/2 and 3/4 of a gram. So let's see what the weigh-in shows. All right, we're there. Well on our way to a nice anchor fly at size 8. This is how you set up to put a tungsten body on a fly. This is an 025 tungsten wire that I bought off eBay. And I checked the density of this wire by cutting an equal length of 025 lead wire and then calculating the ratio of the tungsten wire to that weight to that of the lead wire weight. And it comes out to be 1.7. So I'm fairly assured that this is pretty pure tungsten wire, which is what I need to get a heavyweight anchor fly. The other thing about it is tungsten wire is like spring. It's very brittle, and it actually can throw splinters when you try to cut it. You can bend it, but it's not going to be a tight wind like you'd get from the supple and soft lead wire. So what you have to do is cut straight lengths of this wire and put them on a straight shank hook. The hook today I'm using is a Firehole 570 in a size 8 with a 3.5 millimeter tungsten bead. This assembly alone weighs 0.7 grams, so you're well on your way to getting my goal of a 1.0 to 1.5 gram weight on an anchor fly. So what I do to cut these pieces of wire to length that I want is I put a mark here just behind the bead, leaving a slight gap so I can finish the fly in front of the wire and hide the thread, and then do one turn of collar. And then right at the bend where it starts here, I make another mark, and that's going to be the length of these lead wires that I cut. Tungsten wires that I cut. So I'm taking these Avon tungsten carbide jawed pliers that I bought from Amazon for less than $20. And the reason you get a flush cut side cutter, because then you can look down it and get the length right. So here, and then I'm going to grasp the piece in there. You can see I've cut that more or less to the length. And you could hear how brittle that wire is when you cut it. Let's do it again. There. So I make 6 of these so I can put it around this hook, lash them around this hook to make my tungsten anchor prints. So here's the deal. If your hook shank diameter is equal to the diameter of the tungsten wire, then you can fit 6 of them and snugly affix them to the hook. If the diameter of the wire is less than that of the hook shank, you can possibly fit more than 6. On the other hand, if the wire is greater than the hook shank, then you can only fix 5 or less and have them snugly affixed to the hook. Of course, hit pause if you want to read this in detail, but the major differences between the original recipe and the anchor prints are mostly in the weighting, the use of beads and wire for weight, as well as substituting the gold wire for the tinsel used in the original. Finally, we use the dubbing brush instead of the peacock herl, and for legs, we use CDC oiler puff fibers versus the henback fibers used in the original.